All right, everybody. Woo! Got my good friend here, Kathy Moore. How are you today?
I am fabulous. How are you?
Good. Tell me what's cooking in Tennessee.
Well, we're probably like most others. We're trying to learn day-to-day changes with the quarantine orders and the individual orders in each municipality. And
Yeah.
we just got approved at the TREC meeting, Tennessee Realtors Commission, Real Estate Commission, on Tuesday to break the usual standard for online education, which is ARELA approval, and be allowed to take all of our education online via Zoom or another platform, GoToMeeting. But
Yeah.
I think Zoom is the most comfortable for most of us.
Yeah, no, this is good. So what I'm going to do here is I want to get to the root of what some of the issues are, right? Because I know that there's so much that's going on, and in order for me to kind of serve you, I want to be able to summarize in a way that's meaningful, not just for you, but also anybody who might be watching this video. So just real quickly, what do you see on my screen right now?
A circle, a happy face.
Okay, cool. All right. So if we're going to kind of go through some of the issues, right? Like what's bugging you right now, or what are some of the barriers? It could be process oriented, it could be policy oriented, it could be training. Like what are some of the things that you're kind of struggling with that you also see other people might be struggling with too?
We have a cadre of instructors, probably 15 or so, who have probably never interacted with a classroom in an online situation. I think most of our instructors gain their energy from interacting live and taking that energy into better instruction.
Yeah, that's good. Right. And you remember the first time you delivered a presentation or you delivered a course? It was kind of scary, wasn't it?
Of course, very
Yeah.
scary.
And then I can imagine, anybody who's been maybe doing this for a while is now kind of forced to do this, and their confidence level and their expertise is strong, but in the delivery of it, it might fall short, right? So there's probably, imagine there's like a disconnect or a sense of like lack, because they're not in control of the room anymore like they used to be, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And
So experience
we're
is one thing
also
that takes time. What's next?
trying to figure out how to use, how to embed videos, how to use polling, how to engage these members who are going to be sitting at home. The rules here are we have to have a proctor who is watching them at all times to make sure they're paying attention. So,
Interesting.
so we have to figure out how to engage them in learning. We're going from minimal PowerPoints or a lot of PowerPoints to something that needs to be a little bit more gauging. We've discussed transforming.
I'm sorry. I'm not. The death by PowerPoint is like a bigger issue now than it's ever been, right?
Exactly. So we're looking at some other platforms, maybe, I guess that's the word, to use instead of PowerPoint, like Prezi. I saw a presentation this week with Prezi that was entertaining because it was moving, and you could, you were always looking to see where the instructor was going to go next on his screen.
Oh boy, I almost want to say, don't get me started on Prezi. I wish people would like remove Prezi from the vocabulary. Do you remember?
Well, I don't like it for in person, but I'm not sure about. I did notice that he was speaking to a Rotary Club of a lot of varying ages. And so
Yeah.
it did seem to kind of entertain them
Well, do you know?
because it was almost like a video.
Yeah, no, I remember like, okay, so just as this, I'm just going to pick on Prezi, right? Because I see a
Sure.
lot of folks, even like tech people will say, hey, there's this new way we can create a PowerPoint presentation where these slides can start moving around, right? And I don't know if you remember, like, if you, when you first got to understand that PowerPoint had animations, right? Do you
Right.
remember that? You're like,
Right.
ooh, how can we make this flash in or this disappear or this or that and this and that? And then what ended up happening is we got so focused on our animations that we really lost focus of what our participants wanted to hear. And Prezi has only accelerated that, right? And so when we look at like transferring skills or transferring knowledge, we have to really be focused on what it is we're trying to get across. And if we're too concerned about being flashy, right, or for the sake of engagement, it's actually a false sense of engagement because it distracts people from what they're actually intently trying to understand, comprehend, and take action on. So I'm gonna kind of leave that alone, but we can kind of go into some other things. Like if you're gonna say like your third one that you know you want to hit on, what would you say could would be third?
A lot of our members are going to need a 6 hour course, and that is a long time to be using a course, using a format like this. So
Yeah,
we have our core course, which is the requirement to keep your license in Tennessee is 6 hours. So that's a trick, even if you're live with people.
I know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's super long, right? And when you start to think about how long can somebody actually sit in front of a computer, right? And you, okay, like okay, if you can picture this, I'm gonna come out of screen share, and we're just gonna kind of like talk like as people, right? Okay, our posture right now, like how are you sitting? Are you
Well,
sitting up straight?
pretty much. I'm leaning
Like
back in my chair a bit, but
like
I have a really comfortable office chair, and
okay. And then
it's
are you like vertical? Like
vertical. Yeah.
from head to toe, if you're gonna if let's say you were hung by the top of your head, would it be straight up and down right now, or would it be a little like this, or would your neck be a little bit low?
I would be a little low, and that has to do with the height of the desk, I think,
Yeah.
looking straight into my camera.
So I want you to think about that right for a minute. Like, and this is just the nature of the industry and kind of what we've been kind of stuck with in delivering this type of training is that now people are forced to be put in this position that isn't really good for learning, right? And when you start to think about people who are starting to take these courses, and they can take it from anywhere, they can take it from their computer, they can take it from their laptop, they can take it from their iPad. Some of them are going to be in bed like this,
Right.
right? They're going to be like this. And they're not going to be engaged. And so I think what we have to look at, and this is more, you know, it's like maybe we can talk about stuff that we can control, what we can't control. But I think we really need to take a serious look at education on what the requirements are, how people are actually learning, what seat time looks like, instead of just, I shouldn't say, in addition to seat time, we look at what's actually being accomplished during those presentations, right? What are people
Right.
actually able to do as a result? And you know, like, okay, you know, some people take the courses just because you know they need to get their hours, and then they have other people who are committed to doing this. Well, if we kind of take a look at reframing the way that education is being received, there's a chance that we can actually improve the stickiness of our learning if we kind of figure out a way that makes sense, not just for instructors and students, but also for the regulators to say, hey, you know what, there is a better way that we can go about it. So I don't know if we will have time to really talk about that. There are some ways in technology that we can measure engagement. So for example, if we have checkerboard Brady Bunch videos that are kind of part of this, you can actually, there's actually a way that you can have use AI and facial recognitions to see like who's really engaged, right, or who disappears, for different for different things. So maybe what we can do is we can talk about probably the first one is the lack of experience and really how to get a handle on that, right?
Right.
Really get a handle on increasing the rate of your experience. And it's not just so much seat time, sitting in as many Zoom meetings as you can. I know people are getting Zoomed to death because there hasn't been any policies written, there hasn't been any expectations that have been set, and really like it's Wild West. And I feel bad for, let's say, the administrators or the one who are trying to kind of like herd the cats, because they're now forced in a situation where they haven't been trained on how to properly run meetings. And even like from being in governance, meetings are not always supposed to be an hour, right? A meeting is supposed to be, let's get it done as quickly as we possibly can so we can go and do our work like we are supposed to. So there's a
Absolutely.
huge like shakeup. It's not just training, but it's for meetings also. So I'll probably say the first thing that you can do is take a look at deliberate practice, right? It was that Jeffrey Calvin wrote a book called "Talent is Overrated," and what he mentions in that book is, you can spend all the hours, you can spend your 10,000 hours, but if those hours are not deliberate in improving your core discipline, then you're not going to be as nearly as successful. So in doing so, and you remember your first presentation that you delivered, and your second one, your third one, and probably your 100th one, you made mistakes, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so what we have to do is like, first off, be okay. Be okay with making those mistakes. Put ourselves in uncomfortable situations that you try to prevent, right? That you try to prevent. But seriously, one of the things to think about is, and we just talked about is, we kind of just experiences. Number one, always be camera ready. Why? Because an opportunity to have a Zoom meeting, a quick Zoom meeting to engage or learn, or not just your expertise, but being able to deliver it through a participant chat, or being able to pull up a whiteboard like this to be able to frame a concept that helps people. Like the more of those that you can do, and look at how many skills inside of your kind of skill set in this environment can you refine, the better you are going to be when you're in front of a big group. And let's say, you always start small, right? You start with small groups. One-on-ones are always the best, right? Like me doing this with you gives me good practice for the next person too, right?
Right.
So so then what you work with one person one-on-one, and then you add more people, and then you start to add more people, and you start to add more people. Like if you could imagine, let's pretend your very first presentation was in front of 300 people.
Lovely.
What would that experience be like for you?
I do remember walking into a convention center room with about 350 people in it. And thank goodness it was a team effort, but still, it was so overwhelming, and being so conscious of not making a mistake,
Yeah.
because there were so many people in there who would immediately write that in their notebook and think that was the right answer for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Sort of
you know
fear.
right? Well, feedback, right? Participant feedback, there's implicit, of just kind of like what ends up happening, and there's explicit, right? The explicit is your instructor evaluation, right? Somebody says Kathy did a good job, right?
Right.
um uh uh we were able to implement what she talked. So that's actually comes in a survey, right?
Right.
um Implicit feedback is when you start to see your numbers in your classroom go from 100 to 50. right? It's just like,
Yeah.
where did
They shut
everybody
off their
go?
screens.
What did I say? What did
Yeah.
I do? And so that can have an effect on us, right? It's no different from people walking out of a room if we're teaching a class. So being able to handle that is one thing. Also, another thing is dealing with difficult participants, right? Like if you pull up a participant chat and then somebody starts to become a little vocal and someone starts to really kind of take over in a way that's not productive, we have to be able to handle that. Not just as an instructor, but there's a room moderator. That room moderator also has to be able to handle that as well.
So, speaking of that, we were trying to think about that. So, is it best to tell instructors to stop every 15, 20 minutes and allow participant questions and not necessarily open up mics, but just allow in chat questions to come forward, try to answer those,
Yeah.
not do it real time, because that I don't think any instructor that I know of can actually stay on content with constant interruptions, but allow them in this format every 5, 10, 15 minutes. What's your time, you
Yeah.
think?
No. So what? And I don't know if there's not really like a time for me. It just has to make sense for me
Right.
in the moment, and that just comes with practice. So
Sure.
typically the way that I'll start a program is saying, all right, everybody, woo! So here's what I want to do before we're going to get started. I know you're excited to be here. I'm excited to be here. One thing I'd like for you to do is maybe in the participant chat, just send a little notes. Tell me where you're from. Tell me what you want to be able to get out of today. And if you're not sure where that is, that's located at the very bottom of the screen, participant chat, and then just type it in. Or maybe you want to type in your website, or maybe copy and paste your email signature out. Who cares, right? What we want to do is be able to get to know one another, not just me talking the entire time. And so what I'm going to do is throughout the course of the day today, I'm going to ask you to then go through and add feedback, because your feedback is important. Your questions are feedback, because this isn't so much of a presentation. I'm not going to PowerPoint you to death. We're going to talk. We're going to have real conversations. And even if you want to be brave enough to come up to the front of the room, I'll promote you as a panelist and we can have a real live conversation. So one of the things we can do here today is I'm going to go into screen share so you can kind of see what like the outline is. And in fact, what I did earlier is I sent you these slides. And actually in the participant chat, let me know if you received these slides. And if you didn't, I'm just going to go here. I'm going to copy the link, and then I'm going to go here to the participant chat, and then I'm just going to paste it right in here for you. So that way you can kind of review this right now. So depending on what type of a learner you are, if you want to go off and experiment and kind of see what it talks about. But I sent this ahead of time so that way you can prepare, and keep that in mind too, because as we start to go out through like the next course that you take, part of your learning environment is you taking action ahead of time, right? You reviewing the resources ahead of time. So when you come into this environment, we can do that. So what I'm going to do here real quick is I'm going to stop the screen share. What questions do you have? What's something that kind of want to talk about, etc. So pause. So what I just did here in that moment is I connected with you in a meaningful way using the webcam, right?
Right.
And then it gets to the point where someone says inside of their head, Doug, tell me more. Okay, Doug, enough of that. Will you get to the meat of the presentation, right? That's when I'll get into the screen share side of things. So, like I'll connect with, the webcam is to connect for emotion or to build rapport. And then the screen shares we go into demonstrate the logic. Now, let's say if I'm going into this and I'm back on screen share and I get to the point where I kind of feel like I'm losing people, right? Or sometimes I'm kind of like lost in my own head, which definitely happens. Sometimes I have to reboot my brain. And so once I get into a point, whether it's maybe 3 slides or 5 slides, then I'll say, okay, it's time for me to back up, pause for a minute, and then open it up for questions. And then so I'll always think about process wise is what question can I ask to engage based upon the last few points that we talked about that would allow people to go in and do that? So, like when you kind of work from the stage or work from in front of the room, you kind of have like some tricks, right? It could be like telling a story. It could be pulling out some research. It could be an exercise that you love to do that you always know that works, right? And you don't always you don't know when that you're going to use those, but you just pull them out when you know you need to. So I would recommend having some of those that you can use when you start to engage, because there's going to be a point where you're just like, okay, I need to be able to engage, right? One thing I like to do is, and this is just funny with whatever when technology goes, I'll say, I've got a really good website. Do you want to hear it? And everybody says yes, right? And I say www dot, and whatever the reason is, I don't know. Like, people do not want to miss a website, right? It's just like people do. It could
It's
be.
golden.
It could not even be worth anything, right? www.yourname.com, right? Or I've even said www.google.com. People are like, ooh, can't wait to read that. It's like,
We're excited.
but yeah, it gets people engaged. So that's just one of the things that I'll do, from time to time to build up that engagement. Go ahead.
So you were using a whiteboard earlier. I noticed you pulled that up from somewhere. So where are you getting your whiteboard?
Oh yeah. We talked about this during our little. Do you remember that? I mean, we went so fast during those
Yes,
two
we
days.
did. We
During that
did.
2-day
We
instructor
we have
workshop.
we have actually had many conversations about the types of learners who were in that room and the types of learners who walked away with realizing that you were demonstrating every one of the techniques to us,
Yeah.
but people didn't actually realize that until maybe later. That
Yeah.
you actually, you weren't just trying to teach us something, you were doing it. And
Right.
a lot of people didn't realize what you were doing.
Well, sure. And I think what that comes from is like your level of experience, right? And so if you were going to take that same 2-day deal again, going forward, it would be a totally different experience, right? Because then, you've heard of Bloom's taxonomy before, right? Different
Oh,
levels
yeah.
of learning. Well, if you don't know what something is, like the digital whiteboard app called Doceri, like if you don't know
Oh,
what that
Siri. Yeah.
is, how you can't have an expectation to have mastery on how to insert slides or how to be able to create visual frames that control a conversation. Like, that's like what I demonstrated was the mastery of using that app in a meaningful way, not just saying here is the app. And I think even for what we have to look at is in real estate education is like, we can't just be 50 apps in 50 minutes. We have to actually demonstrate the live application so people can see what that looks like. um because I mean, how many times do you get stuff you just don't use it because you don't know how, or
Well, I
you don't see
think
what the best practice is like?
that was the point, I think, Doug, exactly, because I think most of us are used to consuming education at probably the very lowest of the taxonomy. You were at the very highest of the taxonomy. So it confused and frightened most people, including, well, everybody, I think,
Yeah.
because it was so unique and different. I don't know that we were prepared at that
Yeah.
moment. Looking back on it, I wish I had a video of it. I wish those links that you had set up where we all came back together were still available. They're all gone. So those would probably be the best help right now.
Yeah.
We don't have.
Well,
But
everybody has that PDF. I think it's a 40-page PDF. If you don't have that, I'll send it to you.
I think we have it. Yeah, I have it. It's in my file over here. I pull it out all the time.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
So you're just using Doceri.
Yeah. So do you want me to do a quick demo of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And sound effects too, when you have a minute.
Sound effects.
You're like a disc jockey over there.
I'm telling you, it's like,
OMG. No, you didn't. Cray cray.
I got Alexa here with me too, by the way.
I hear her. Mine's sitting right here. She doesn't know what.
So do you remember this?
Yes,
Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, cool. And just as a little side note, sometimes we have to like get it in a habit of asking, "Hey, can you see my screen?" Because a lot of times when we switch back and forth between webcam and screen share, sometimes we think that we're sharing our screen, but we actually don't, right?
Right.
So here's the whiteboard that we talked about at the very top. Here is kind of I call it your toolbar of being able to add in specific things. If I wanted to insert an image, I click on this and this pulls up, because I'm using the iPad, it pulls up the photos. So I have, instead of having 60 slides, I'll have 60 visuals that are they're not bullet point visuals. They are visual frames that allow me to express or to be able to facilitate answers that like you already know the answer to, but it's my process that I put you through, right? So that's a totally different. That's a huge shift in being able to deliver and facilitate education, whether you're doing this live or you're doing this remote. Visual frames, I believe, you've seen people do flip charts before. If I were to draw up this flip chart right here, strategic leadership and technology, how long would it take for me to be able to draw that?
Hours.
Well, no, just like writing the text, like strategic, if I were going to actually write
5 minutes or so.
Yeah. If you were sitting down in your computer and waiting for me to draw this out and it takes 5 minutes, how engaged would you be?
I would be zooming out.
You'd be solely zoomed out, right? You'd be checking your phone, you'd be on Facebook. Like the internet minute is a whole lot faster than what we have to, it seems like a whole lot faster. We don't have the luxury of time like we do maybe in front of a room where people can be a little patient. Or if it's measured in seat time, like they just have to be there. So by having these visual frames prepared ahead of time, then allows you to be able to put it into your screen share in a way that kind of moves people to. So I can start to ask a question like, right now with your leadership, if they, two things when it comes down to having leadership with technology is, number one, you got to have a vision. Number two, you have to have urgency, right? A lot of people are scrambling right now because they didn't have a vision for screen to screen selling, right?
Right.
There wasn't the vision for it. And then also they might have had a vision, they might have seen it, but they didn't place the right system. They didn't put in place the right tool. They didn't allocate their resources in the moment. And so, now people are having difficulties. And so the ones that really did have a vision for this and then put the resources in place, gosh, they're not being affected as much. I mean, everybody's affected, but they're not being as affected as much. So what I just did there, what I just did is I kind of taught in 3 different lessons. Did you catch that?
I did.
So number 1 was being able to pull up the screen share. Number 2 was being able to do the whiteboard app. Number 3 was being able to facilitate the process of the conversation. Then in 4 is I kind of just inserted a little deal on screen to screen, which is the content inside of the process.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have your book right here in front of me, but I do have your book.
Cool. Cool.
Screen
You
to
had a
screen.
vision, right? You had the vision.
I did.
So, with
What
that
other,
app, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, what other ideas do you have that would be fairly easy for most of I'm guessing that maybe out of our instructor pool right now, maybe 4 of us were in your training.
Okay.
Rest of us were not. So what are the most important techniques to try to portray to the ones who are brand new to this idea?
Yeah. It's a really good question. It's very simple, right? Now, number
Simply complex.
often overlooked
Look,
because we're in this new environment, right? We're totally in a new
exactly.
environment, and if there's discomfort, right? When you're
Oh,
pushed
yeah.
outside your comfort zone, you're totally so you got to have fun, right? You got to be able to like laugh, not just like at not just at a concept, but you have to be able to laugh at yourself, right? Not take it so seriously. Because that's what's going to engage folks. Because then they say, okay, you know what, this guy or gal is human. They do make mistakes, but they're committed to me, and that's what matters. Now, having fun, it comes in different ways. Like you have to be able to smile during this. So this is an emoji sticker
Okay.
that I put up next to my webcam,
Okay.
and so this just reminds me to smile.
Okay.
Now you could get a little label maker and put the word smile up there, but like
I think I
gotta
have
be able
those somewhere.
I gotta be able to look into your buy this roll. This is a roll of them. Actually, I put these in my thank you notes when I send them out. Super cheap, right?
Yeah.
To have those. And it just reminds you to smile, especially because when you're looking at technology like this, like you're looking at Zoom meeting, a lot of people are like this.
Exactly. I see those faces.
What?
I see those faces in our Zoom meetings.
All the time, right? It's the grumpy cat look.
Yeah.
Gosh, I forget the gentleman's name. He's a professor in Louisiana. He calls it the default look, right? Like, what's your default look when you show up in life? Well, you have a different kind of default look when you're using technology, because it's like, where is that? Where is that thing that I'm? So if you don't remind yourself to smile like that, it's totally gonna put people off. Second thing that's relatively simple is get really comfortable in your shortcuts, in your keyboard
Okay.
shortcuts. Now, what's a shortcut for copy?
Oh, you use your Control Alt keys instead of
Yeah. So Control C
use
is for
Control
copy.
C.
What's the
Yeah.
shortcut for paste?
V.
What's the shortcut for open up a new tab in a
Now
browser?
there's one I don't know. I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to
cool.
look
So
up.
let's do some of these, right? So I've got my web browser pulled up, and so right now we're talking. I'm on this particular thing, but let's say I want to open up a new web browser. It's Control T or Command T because I've got a MacBook.
Okay.
That opens up a new tab, and then I can start to type in, whatever website that I have. And so because I have my browsing history still activated, it'll pull this up here too. Now, one of the things to think about here too is you have bookmarks, right?
Right.
So here's my bookmarks that I have set up. And this is like, bookmarks is not new, right?
No.
It's not new. And many times, especially if it's not an easy to remember website, or it's a long website that has a lot of different characters, there's no way you're possibly going to be able to remember that. So here, just an exercise is just encourage your instructors to create their list of bookmarks, which is links to the frequently asked questions that you can then demonstrate and be able to kind of move forward, right?
True.
Now, another shortcut that's often overlooked is when you're demonstrating a website, we also have to keep our mobile users in mind,
Okay.
right?
Right.
That was my alarm clock. Not that I have to go, but I set it for 7 and I woke up at 5. This is kind of the reality. So you can't see, it's very, if somebody's watching this from a mobile device, it's very difficult to see this. So Command plus is zoom in, Command minus is zoom out. See that?
Yep.
Because people will say, I can't see that, right? Or can you, can you, I can't see that. So
That's the most common comment I've seen in meetings where we're trying to look at agendas or
oh
something,
my gosh. Yeah.
or look at Excel
Shoot me now.
spreadsheet. You just can't see it.
Shoot me now, right? Get to know the
Exactly.
Zoom. And so each application, like Excel, if we open up Excel, the Zoom is located in a different area. Word,
Right.
the Zoom is located in a different area. You can increase the font size, but no, don't do that because then it messes up
Just
your
zoom
document.
in.
Zoom in, zoom out, right? Also, this is kind of funny. I just have this pulled up. This is so SlideShare is even good for PowerPoints, right? So anybody, so this is like I'm doing my full screen PowerPoint presentation right here. Now, one thing to note is inside of this PowerPoint presentation that I have is that my font size for my bullet points or my text is significantly larger, right?
Right.
So I do that on purpose. Now, if I have something like this, like you won't be able to read this. But the point of this slide is not for people to be able to read everything on here. The purpose of this slide is to inform people that, hey, if you wanted to create a flash briefing skill, there's a website for it, and you can Google steps to create a flash briefing, and it's located here on the Amazon Alexa platform.
Okay.
Got it?
Yep.
So if somebody says they can't see, we'll say, okay, well, what we have, this is actually listed in the resource section of our handout, and then or you can Google it. So that way, people don't feel like they're, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to remember this, or I'm going to be able to write it all down. It's just kind of a way to be able to provide some comfort. So, so I have a lot of screenshots that I have that are put in here, and when I do my screenshots too, I always zoom in before I create the screenshot.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Because this is like on my website, on each one of these websites, it's not normally like this. I had to zoom in before I took the screenshot. So I had to make sure that whatever screenshot that I'm taking at least had enough text that there was familiarity with the website. And people would be able to visit it afterwards. So that's just a couple.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know you've got to jump off, but I really appreciate your help.
Yeah, you bet. I don't know. Did we cover? I'm just going to kind of go back through here my notes. Did we cover everything, or do you want? Is there anything else that you want to talk about? If there's one thing that you'd say right now is, you wish could be better.
I guess our ability to use all of this technology is going to be a major stretch. And I think trying to get education directors to remember that they probably need to start their schedule with the most technologically savvy and invite instructors to join those classes free, to watch someone who is skilled and has practiced this
Yeah.
perform rather than starting. We wanted to start with someone, even if it's a national speaker, and I've been talking to several who just do fantastically well with all this moving parts, and start there rather than starting with someone who cannot do anything except talk into the screen. Sorry.
No. It's so, you bring up an interesting point. This is probably a good way to close this, is that, in the realm of education, aside from instructional design and aside from, putting together like change management programs, there's two core, should I call it skills?
Yeah.
Number one is creating content. And number two is delivery.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are a lot of experts that don't know how to create content, right? They can talk. They're smart, super smart, but they have a struggle creating content. And I probably, you know, the first group that comes to mind, and it's not picking on them specifically, but just that come to mind is attorneys, right? Super smart, been doing it for a long time, but creating content, they can write out long drafts, whatever. But as far as creating content that's meaningful to put in a presentation, it's a challenge. And then second is with, and when you look at content and putting together education, there's so many different experts that are needed today, right? You can't just have a one-trick pony and expect them to know it all. And I think what's great about this technology is now we can pull in experts on different subject matter or different topics and not have to rely on one person kind of holding the grail of education in their area. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is so real.
Sure.
And that content has to be created and formatted and put in a way that's you know, we can get into learning objectives versus performance objectives. So it gets deep just with the content itself. And the second we have is delivery. And so with delivery, what we're looking at is being able to transfer learning in multiple ways that are a benefit to our end user, a benefit to our participant. And unfortunately, there hasn't been enough attention on delivery in this environment. And that's why everybody's struggling right now, right? It's not
Sure.
that this isn't new, right? Zoom has been around for over 5 years.
Right.
You know, I started using it in 2014. And so, but people have to catch up because it wasn't a priority. It wasn't a priority then. There was a high level of comfort in the way that it was doing. And so when you look at delivery, you know, you think about as far and what the expectations are of participants. Everyone has very high expectations, right? Like Amazon has kind of set the standard for a lot of things because they're just like, well, why can't y'all do it like Amazon, right? Like,
Exactly.
it's a big deal. And then when you start to take
Or
courses
TED Talks.
or TED
TED
Talks, right?
Talks. Oh, man.
Everyone has access to this stuff in other areas, but no one can kind of do it in their own realm. And so
That's right.
there's a huge opportunity to improve the delivery. And so we kind of bring this full circle, right? Especially if technology is the priority over content, or excuse me, if delivery is the priority of content right now, is that, to your point, we have to find experts in delivery, right? We really do need to find experts in delivery that can model the exemplary performance on how this is done. And I'd say this too, kind of like off the record, even though we're live. Um, there's a lot of experts, a lot of people in delivery who thinks they're an experts in delivery, but their people fall short, right? So that's kind of a perception thing that needs to be worked on. But for really looking at change, we have to find people who are really doing it well and model ourselves after them, but preserving our own authentic self, right?
Right.
Like I'm just as weird in front of a group as I am through, you know, screen to screen. That's just, you just have to kind of take it. That's just that's just who I am. So there's huge opportunities everywhere, right? And I think if no matter where you are in this kind of spectrum, it's okay where you are, right? You know, to expect to be speaking fluent Spanish right now, and you just opened up a Spanish book, isn't realistic. You know, when I do my my training for triathlons, you know, they talk about run the mile that you're in, right? So if I'm doing a half marathon, I can't be thinking about mile 12. I can't be thinking about mile 13. I got to run the mile that I'm in. So, you know, wherever you are, you know, run the mile that you're in. You have plenty of resources, right? You have plenty of resources at your fingertips, and I'm happy to be that for you, Kathy, and anybody else.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Doug. It was great just to jump on and talk to you. I've been watching some things you're doing, and you're always innovative and fun. And I love what you're doing with Alexa, and good luck.
Yeah, cool. All right,
Just woke
everybody.
up over here.
And hey, we wouldn't have done this if you would have messaged me on Facebook to say, "Hey, can we do one of these?" So this is a great way for
Right.
me to start my day.
Sent you a message so you can read it. Take care.
All right. Yeah.
Yay.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.